everyone. Thanks for joining us today at TGIF. My name is Kate Klingensmith. I'm here with Bob Manning. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Maybe you can take it away with our introduction.
Sure, I'll start with the introductions here. I do the introductions because I get to brag about Kate and she wouldn't brag about herself. I mean, some of you have heard this before. But first, me, Senior Advisor for Community Engagement. I mean, that senior relates more to the color of my hair than it does to my experience with Head Start. But my story, which many of you already know, is that I am married to Yasmina Vinci, who's the Executive Director of the National Head Start Association. 2 years ago, I retired and I had spent my life as a salesman and so forth. And she said, "Hey, I got a job for you. This parent gauge is really important. We need somebody to support Kate who can do everything technically, and but just somebody to go out and tell the story because parent gauge is really important to individual families, to programs, to NHSA, to our lobbying effort, to everything else." And so I like to joke about the fact, and it's partly a joke, that she's got me working harder than I used to when I got paid. But it is enormously satisfying to work with people who get up every morning thinking about kids, who work with kids all day, who go to bed at night thinking about them. And it's really an honor to be associated with NHSA and all that they do in my little specific role here in trying to help support Kate. Now, Kate is a product manager. And the reason she can't talk about herself is that she would not point out just how, if you went to central casting for a person to be product manager, you'd probably pick somebody who was a graduate engineer from a top engineering school, like, for example, MIT, which is where Kate is an engineering graduate, and somebody also who maybe had experience teaching kids in inner city schools, which Kate has done in her hometown of Houston. And so it's just ideal because Kate really understands the data, and she also knows what it's like teaching kids. And Kate says, partly in joking, but partly in truth, that people at MIT think data is tough. They got no clue until they've tried to teach a mom who is stressed out with a child who may have some special needs standing up in front of a classroom. So that's my introduction to Kate and to me. And that's the end of that slide.
Oh, thanks, Bob. So I just want to point out, as product manager, I'm here to really interface between all of you using Parent Gauge and our software development team. So Bob and I are both here with open ears and always ready to help with your implementation and answering questions that you may have as you're getting started. So I love my job. This is year 5 for me. So I've been on board since the very beginning of Parent Gauge, and I've always enjoyed working with programs across the country. So just at a really high level, in case you may know a whole lot about Parent Gauge, you might not know very much. Parent Gauge is a web-based tool. So this is a website you can access from any device, even cell phones. The people who log in are going to be your staff. So family service workers, family advocates, home visitors, maybe even your teachers. And what it provides is a guided conversation with a guardian. Either 2 or 3 times a year, we encourage folks to do at least 2 conversations using Parent Gauge. And it really allows you to hear good stories from families directly. So it includes about 25 closed-ended questions, meaning on a Likert scale of 1 to 5 with agreement statements. How much do you agree with this? From not at all to very much. And then 9 open-ended questions that allow the guardians of the children in Head Start and early Head Start to just tell their stories about how things are going. So this is really great on a microcosm level with one family, learning how are they, what do they need, but also you can look at the program across the trends, whether that's in classrooms, centers, or your entire program. So it's just going to offer you a lot of great insight into, how the families are doing, and maybe if we need to offer them more support and resources in certain areas. So Bob, take it away.
Okay, now I put a lot of effort into trying to explain what is it makes Parent Gauge different from any other assessment. And as best I can do to summarize it, it's this. First, This is scientifically designed conversation. And what I mean by scientifically designed is every one of the questions that becomes the basis for parent gauge questions and answers and conversation. All these questions are selected because it's research showing that these are the things that really help a child develop. I mean, they looked at dozens of different questions, and the things that they picked out to put in the parent gauge conversation are the things where there's solid research showing that this helps a child develop. Some of them are obvious. Reading. There's a question in here about, do you have daily routines with your child? Well, a lot of parents may not know it, uh, but there is research that shows if a child has something they can look forward to every day at the same time, it really does a lot to bring stability into their lives. And so, the with this as a basis, this conversation, these specific topics, help us to draw out some things. Parents know stuff about their child that nobody else knows, that we don't know. And if in the course of this conversation we can learn something that we might not have known otherwise, my child has trouble meeting and playing with other children. I don't read to the child very much. Um, so if we can learn stuff from the child that we couldn't learn any other way. The other thing is that Head Start has helped 30 million families over 50 years. And so we're likely to come up in the course of an interview with a couple of things that we've learned that are really specifically helpful to that child. And a lot of this depends on the individual interviewer. One, creating an atmosphere where the parents really feel comfortable telling us the honest truth. And number two, being sensitive to, hey, here's an opportunity to teach this family something. And that's not going to happen with every one of the questions. But if you get two or three specific things in the course of your interview, you can do a huge amount. So that's all I have to say about that slide. Um, Goal setting. People are always talking about setting goals. And Parent Gauge helps us set the most specific goals that we can do. Specific goals get met. We'll have unique things that we can apply to a whole classroom. We may find out that in a particular classroom, people didn't know who to call if their child got sick. We can address that at a classroom level. We may learn that in a particular classroom, people aren't reading to the child very much. So we can do that. And out of the parent gauge interview, you may come up with two or three things that you say, hey, as a program, we should be emphasizing this for the next couple of months. Let's emphasize it. Now, the other side of the goal setting is for each child. We may have a child where the goal is, hey, we want them to be read to more. We may have a child where the goal is, hey, get them in class every day. So you can get very specific goals from Parent Gauge. And the more specific goals are, the more likely they are to be met. So I think the goals part of this is really important. I've got this slide in here about the PFCE framework just to emphasize that Parent Gauge was designed working closely with OHS and being sure that we address all of the things that they want to be addressed in terms of family outcomes. And you look at these 7 different family outcomes, and you see that the Parent Gauge conversation is specifically geared towards each of those 7 things. We want to be sure we're measuring the stuff that OHS wants us to measure. And we try very hard to do that. I think we've done it successfully. So that's what I have to say about the PFCE framework. This measuring whether your message is getting through. A number of people have been really surprised to find out a message wasn't getting through. Two of them I mentioned, every program encourages parents to read to their child. We discovered early on that a lot of parents hadn't gotten the message. One program, Butler County, Ohio, Suzanne Prescott, who was the first to interview 1,000 families, they said, a number of our families really weren't reading to the child. And we went to the TS Gold scores on reading readiness. There was a huge correlation between children being read to and how well they were doing. So we said, hey, our message wasn't getting through. We're really going to emphasize that. Minnesota has a lot of programs on Parent Gauge. They decided to combine their data, and what they discovered was a lot of parents didn't understand how it was to be important to have the child in class every day. And so they emphasized that. That was a big surprise. They thought we were emphasizing this all the time. So you can measure whether your message is getting through. And obviously, when we have data to see how we're doing, we can improve. So that's what I have to say about the message getting through. Two benefits beyond the individual family. One is that when it comes to reviews from OHS, Parent Gauge helps you show OHS you're doing a good job on family engagement. And it's not a coincidence. We work closely with OHS. Anything that helps improve the relationship with OHS is a plus for the program. And the last bullet point here has to do with our effort to advocate to Head Start to get more money, which NHSA has been consistently successful in doing that. I mean, over the last 10 years, we've more than doubled the amount going to Head Start, and it looks like we're going to have a pretty good year again this year. It is really important for Yasmina and her team when they march up to Capitol Hill, literally in person, which is going to start happening again figuratively. It's important to show Congress people data to show that Head Start does what we know it does. It does a better job of involving the family, of involving multiple generations than any other early education program out there. And that is an important message that we've got to drive through again and again and again. Parent Gauge helps. So that's the end of my benefits here. Let's see, I guess, well, either of us can do this. Kate, why don't you take this slide here?
Okay, great. Yeah, we're getting really close to the live demo. So I'll just sort of explain again sort of how Parent Gauge works. So this is not a piece of paper that you slide across the table and ask, guardians to check out their answers. This is really a conversation. So the folks who actually log into Parent Gauge are going to be your team. We do have program administrator roles, center administrator roles, and then staff roles. And we have some programs where only the program administrator interviews families. We have programs where every single home visitor is talking to every single family using Parent Gauge 2 to 3 times a year. So just keep in mind, this isn't something where you pass along an account to a parent. We actually want to have this conversation with them. And so what we're seeing is that the staff are learning immediately how they can help their families. And then again, at a larger scale, the leadership at programs can really focus on areas for improvement. In the case that Les Bob has been talking about, families didn't realize that they should be reading to their child every day. So it's just a really helpful tool both on the micro and macro level. As I've already mentioned, this system is set up to conduct what we call initial, mid, and post interviews. During our pilot from, I guess, 2015 to 2017, what we found was that some programs wanted to establish a baseline in the beginning of the year. So they will really focus on questions about how is the family doing. Rather than in the mid and post interviews, we're going to focus on questions about both how the parent is engaging with their child and how that parent is engaging with the program. So there are 2 different versions. Mid and post are identical. Initial is a little truncated without having those program-focused questions. But each round of interviews consists of 25 to 35 of those Likert scale questions. I'll show you many examples in a minute here. And then 10 open-ended questions. So the idea is that this is a formative assessment, and you can talk to your families over time and see if the changes that you're making, if any of the levers you've pulled or knobs you've turned are really having a positive impact on their experience, and how confident they feel as their guardianship, and then how confident they feel with your program. So I'm going to hop right in to Parent Gauge to show you all the system. A couple of notes here. This is a demo site. One of the design principles of Parent Gauge is keeping private information very private. So as I mentioned before, there's a number of roles Program administrators can view all data, all rosters from every quote unquote center within their program. Then there is a center administrator level. They still have access to creating staff accounts and seeing all of their center data. And then your staff members will be assigned to one or many centers. One teacher may just have access to her one classroom, or you may have your Somali interpreter having access to all of the centers within your program. It's a very flexible system with these different roles that help manage privacy of the data. So I'm going to be logging in right now as a program administrator just to show you the full set of tools, since many of you on the line may probably be program administrators. So what we've got here is our home landing page, and you would see the same thing as, say, a family advocate. We try to guide people through the experience by making it very clear what they need to think about when they log into Parent Gauge. So the first thing would be managing rosters. So if I was a staff member, I would see my staff roster, so I could contact other people using Parent Gauge within my center, my children, my guardians, and then I would also see my interview list and the ability to create new interviews. And then after, of course, you've conducted some of these conversations, you could go look at the data. So let me walk you through a couple more features before we get into the interviews themselves. We have a really thorough help section with all sorts of additional resources that folks can use based on feedback during our pilot. So for example, we realized that some people maybe wanted a visual scale to offer to families while they were interviewing them. So on the agreement statement questions, those closed-ended questions, this would be a helpful visual aid so you wouldn't have to repeat the answer choices every single time. So we've provided a bunch of tools like that based on requests from programs over time. We also do have a direct connection here to our tech support team with a really easy form under contact, and that lets you, get anything that you're having issues with. Sometimes people don't have the correct access, and we can point them to their administrators. Basically, people aren't having trouble using the system at all. It's always a matter of like the back end, like, oh, you don't have the proper permissions, let's talk to this other person. So anyways, it's really easy to get our tech support online, usually same day, and have your issues resolved. So that all comes with the subscription, which I'll have Bob talk about later. But now getting back to our system. So again, I'm a program administrator. My job when I get started would be to create centers. So I mentioned this already, that centers are really flexible. You can create centers based on individual schools or sites. Some programs have said, well, we have 3 schools, but each have a Head Start and an Early Head Start program. So I want to do Johnson Head Start, Johnson Early Head Start, Martin Head Start, Martin Early Head Start. You can create these centers however you want to structure it. Other programs have created centers based on their individual home visitors. So they have literally named centers after their individual staff members and just given them access to that one center. So again, super flexible and really easy to use the creation forms and the filters to find exactly what you're looking for. So from this page, I can create a new center really quickly. So I could just say, as of today, I want to do a test July 30th. I think that's today's date. And maybe this is one of my Head Start programs. And then I want to just say, well, our school year is going to start formally on August 1st. So that's it. I've got a program created. Now, this is a bucket into which I can create staff members, children, and guardians. So from all of our rosters, you can also click on any existing record and either edit or even delete these records. Very easy to do. So you'll notice this trend across all of these types of rosters. So we first created our centers, then we would create staff accounts for our staff. And I have similar roles here with, I can filter this list, I can find exactly what I'm looking for, I can click on any one of these records, and I can create a new one really easily. So to create a staff in your system, you just have to give them access to the centers that they should have access to. I need their email address. I'll just put in a test. And then, are they active or inactive? And this field is here because you can actually go and change people's inactive, active status over time. And then who am I creating this account for? Family service worker, teacher, our home visitor, or a center administrator. Maybe I'm making a new center administrator. So just as simple as that. Now, I'll quickly run through children and guardians. Very similar. Filters are a little bit more extensive here. Creating a child takes about 1 minute, though there is the option to populate these rosters with uploading a report from Child Plus. So that is our current, what functionality that we have here. We do aim in the future to import from other systems, but we don't have a timeline for that just yet. But a lot of programs are using Child Plus. They download a special report that Child Plus worked with us to create and upload it into the system. And you can have your children and your guardians populated pretty much automatically. And you can update that list using new imports whenever your team is ready to do the next round of interviews. So that about covers our rosters. Now let's look at our interviews. Of course, this is the meat of Parent Gauge. And what I can do here is look at all of the interviews that I should have access to, given the centers that I'm assigned to. Now, I can look at just my incomplete interviews, for example, or all of them. I can look at an evaluation period if I wanted to just check back on my mid-year interviews now that I'm about to do my end of year. And then I can set a date range or just look at all my mid-year interviews. And I can pick just one of my centers if I wanted to filter it down by that. I can find an interview just if I was looking for one child or one guardian. And these filters are extremely helpful in narrowing down exactly what you want to find. Now I can click on any one of these interviews and see the form that's probably been filled out already. But I also want to point out that creating an interview is very quick. So all I would need to do is choose the center which the child is enrolled, about whom I'll be speaking with. And then I can just have an auto select for all of the fields of, who is the interviewer, who is guardian, and who is the child about whom we're speaking. What is the date of the interview? Am I doing this in the beginning, the middle, or the end of the year? Are we talking in person or over the phone? And in which language are we speaking? And that's it. I've suddenly got a brand new interview. So I'm pointing out some of the features of this interview. Number one, you have the ability to print it, whether it's a blank template or whether it is a completed interview. This provides you with a PDF. Some programs like to print it out and stick it in a folder, in a file. Or, it's a good idea for your interviewers if they're going in person. Maybe a family doesn't have Wi-Fi or cell phone signal. They have a paper copy that they can manually record their responses on and, come in and digitally enter it later. So we also, this is really cool, have the ability to quickly translate the entire interview from English to Spanish, French, and Arabic. That includes all of the conversational prompts, the open-ended questions, and the closed-ended questions and their answer choices. So as an administrator, I can delete records. As a staff member, I would not see this button. I also would not see lock. Lock is a feature if you want to make sure that nobody comes back in after you run your reports or something and you don't want people coming in and changing any of the data. So you'll see here, upon creation of the interview, I end up with the date, the evaluation period, the center, of course, the interviewer, child, guardian, and if the child has a teacher assigned to them or home visitor, then that would be here as well. Now, I am using an outdated browser, and I apologize, but usually there is a microphone icon right here, and we do have the ability to record audio directly from your device right into Parent Gauge. It creates an audio file. So if the family you're speaking with, if that's how your staff or you are comfortable, and you get permission from them, you can actually record the entire thing, or you can actually record multiple audio files on each page of the interview. You have that button, and you can attach files, for example, for each open-ended question if you wanted to go back later and take more extensive notes. So we start the interview by, some really comfortable natural language. Thanks for participating. I'm interested in learning about you and your child's experience with our program. I'll ask you questions about your relationship with your child, the role in your child's education, health and well-being, etc. And we start this conversation with, we tell them what's happening. And then the first question is just, tell me about your experience so far. Tell me how the program has helped you. And in this open-ended question response field, you can just take notes, look for highlights. This thing has gone really well, or areas for improvement. Like, we don't have a library card, so we're not reading to our child every day or something. We thought that we'd asked for that. It didn't happen. Whatever it is, this is just a great icebreaker to get people, comfortable and talking about their experience. So as Bob had pointed out, this is aligned with the PFCE framework. So you'll see that we have actually aligned every single section of the parent gauge conversation with one of those 7 family outcomes. So we've got our building, positive child-parent relationships, families as lifelong learners, health and nutrition, et cetera. So you'll notice that these sections are all themed. So we can actually ask, questions based on how parents are thinking about things. So right here we have these questions about your relationship with your child. So, what I wanted to point out here are these coupleted questions, and Bob will go into a lot of detail about this. But what we've done is we've formed the questions around the parent engagement with their child. So, for example, I have daily routines with my child. How much would you agree with that statement? Somebody might say, somewhat, we're getting there. And then you'd follow up with that by asking, how much would you agree with this statement? The program helped me create daily routines with my child. And they could say very much. They could say, we didn't really realize that was important, and we learned, the program helped us understand the importance. So again, you can see a lot of coupleted questions here. I know how to help my child meet and play with other children. And of course, following up, the program has provided me with ideas about how to do this. So each of these sections ends with another open-ended question. And every time you click next, it acts as a save button, which is really cool in case Wi-Fi drops or something like that. I won't go into much detail about all of these questions, but I just want to give you a sense of the sections and their themes. But I'm going to jump ahead to health and nutrition because they're very specific and give a lot of really good information. So I make sure my child receives regular medical care. The program supported me in getting this. So this is very important in terms of understanding families' needs. Now the conversation ends with 2 very open-ended questions. What could the program do differently to better help you and your family? And then at the end, it's just a very open, tell us, is there anything else you'd like me to know? So this is a really great conversation tool. And then in the end, what you have is your data. So our reporting module consists of 2 types of reports. We've got a baseline report, which is going to give you 1 snapshot in time. And we've got a growth report, which allows you to compare data side by side from 2 different points in time. So if I go to my baseline report, what I can do is I can pick, our filters are extensive here. So if I wanted to look at my data from the end of the year, for example, at the end of this school year, I might end up with nothing here. I know that I have a lot of data from earlier, from like 2017, but we'll try this. And I wanted to look at only my end of year conversations with families in our early Head Start program. And maybe I only wanted to look at my Spanish speaking families. Maybe I wanted to look at only the families in one of my centers, or all of the interviews done by just one interviewer. You can layer these and get exactly what you're looking for. Let me see what this number does. It may be a 0, but yep. I'm going to go back up here and reset this filter. So I'm going to say I want all of my interviews from this entire school year. Maybe, actually, let me reset everything. Let's go for this. All right. So I am looking at the data from 22 interviews. I'm going to go back further because I don't have enough data here for it to tabulate. Let me do this real quick. Okay. So from 399 interviews over the course of time, what I'm going to look at is a breakdown of the closed-ended question responses. When you consider not at all is a response value of 1 and very much is a 5. I'm looking at the breakdown of the questions that are focused on, the parent engagement with their child and then the parent engagement with the program. And I'm seeing these average scores of 3.4, 3.5, so I can come back up here and realize, oh, that's good. I mean, these are all positive agreement statements. So if we're seeing our families saying in between somewhat and mostly, we'll definitely be able to identify areas that may be lower, and then we'll also be able to celebrate our areas that are closer to a 5. So each and every question's average score is broken down, again, based on the filters that you've applied. So here you can see maybe here is an area that you want to focus on. The program has provided activities that help me get my child ready for school. We're looking at a 2.84. That's only between not very much and somewhat. So maybe we want to think about how we can provide additional activities for school readiness. You can also, which is really, really great, drill down into each individual question and see exactly how many people responded and who responded which way. So out of all of the total responses on this question, my child and I can communicate well. Luckily, we've got a lot of people saying very much and mostly, but here are the areas that we can really make an impact by looking at the families who say not at all. We have communication issues, or not very much. We need some help. We can actually click on any one of these and look at exactly which guardian reported that response on that question. So we know that we need to focus on these folks to help them with their communication with their child. So that is super cool. And then let me just quickly show you the growth report. Again, you can compare 2 different rounds. So I might be looking at, again, I'm going back to old data just because I know it's here, 2017-18 mid-year versus post. So how were our families responding in the middle of the year? What did we do to improve resources and support? And then how did they respond at the end of the year? And again, extensive filters for all of this. I'm going to look at my data here. And now I've got my comparisons between the 2 different periods in time. So each and every question, again, I can see what the average scores were. So for example, when I started with the program, the staff learned about my family. This had a huge change. So this program would have, implemented some sort of a welcoming program, maybe an initial home visit or 2. And they really saw an improvement in how families were feeling about this. So this is a super important tool. I also want to point out one last thing here, which is you can download all of your raw data. You can get an Excel spreadsheet. Each row represents one interview, and you can slice it and dice it any way you want to. You have every single demographic data point for the children, the guardians, the center, the interviewer, and you can look at all of the raw data scores and all of your open-ended question responses. So, that is Parent Gauge in a nutshell. Now I'm going to jump back over here, and I believe, Bob, I'm going to pass the ball back to you.
That's great, Kate. Thanks. So, what I try and do in my part of this is just pass along some stories I've heard from programs that are actual users. As you know from Kate, there are an enormous number of things that you can do with Parent Gauge. I just wanted to kind of maybe crystallize a couple of things that you can do that might give you just a little bit more clarity. Now, first, this opening question, Kate talked about this before, but this is the icebreaker. Just tell me about your experiences so far with Head Start. And it's designed with a sort of a prompt if you have a little bit of trouble getting the ice broken. Basically asks the same question a different way. But the purpose of this question is a little bit of conversation, as it is with all the open-ended questions. And in this particular one, it's just we want to help the parent get comfortable with the whole process. And you've got an introduction, which is everybody will be told about, but this is just to kind of get the ice broken. And most programs tell me that the ice gets broken pretty quickly on this one. So then I'm turning to a couple, 2 specific questions which illustrate a little bit. Here's this question about reading. I set aside time to read with my child. And then the second part of this is really important, and this is a differentiation from Parent Gauge. It's, hey, how's the program doing? The first one is how you doing with your child, and the second one is the Head Start program helping you? And a story which kind of illustrates the importance of this I was talking with a Head Start director who actually did some interviews herself, see how it worked. And she talked to a mother who said, I just absolutely love Parent Gauge. And the director thought to herself, I think Parent Gauge is pretty good, but asked, what is it that you are so tremendously enthusiastic? And she said, every other evaluation is you guys evaluating me. This second half of the Parent Gauge question, the 9A, I turn the tables. I get to evaluate you, and that is a big deal to me. I think it's important both for the interviewer to understand that, and maybe to get the parent comfortable with the notion that, hey, we really are trying for this to be a two-way conversation among equals, and so that's an important part of that. And we'll talk a little bit about the reading. Well, the reason I singled out this reading question is it's so hugely important. Now, here's another one. If we want to go back to the sample question, and I mention this one because it turns out to be a big surprise. The Minnesota Head Start Association has a lot of programs on Parent Gauge, and they decided to look at the individual questions and see which ones really correlated with how well the kids were doing. And they found that the answer to this question 10A, a number of parents said, well, you never really helped me understand that it's important for my child to be in class every day. I mean, they were surprised. Clear case of message not getting through. They thought the message was, so they decided really to emphasize that. There's obviously two reasons why this is important, three things, I guess, that are important about this. Number one, a surprise for some programs, it's maybe something to be alert to for the interviewer if you're getting a sense that the mother maybe doesn't understand the importance of being in class. Second thing is, of course, it's important to the child. Third thing, it's important to the program. I mean, our attendance statistics are really important. So then when you get that done, you get your baseline evaluation, which will be on the next slide here. And this is the average for your course. And so after this is done, the program leaders will look at, hey, which questions maybe should we really emphasize? You don't want to have 25 goals going ahead. You want to have two or three things you're really going to emphasize. And this particular program had pretty mediocre scores on reading and on classroom attendance. So they said, hey, we're really going to push that the next couple of months. So then you do your next interviews, and you get the report that Kate talked about before, the growth report. In this particular case, you look at the growth report to see how you did. And hey, they did good. The reading is up, classroom attendance is up, help by the Head Start program is up. So again, there's just a whole lot of data that show when you measure stuff and evaluate it, it really helps things improve. So that's what I've got to say about that. Now, the next two slides I've got in here are very specific reasons. This drill down, I want to show how you can drill down in the data in one question. I use reading. You can do this with any other thing. But every single program has told me that they've got more kids being read to as a result of Parent Gauge. There's probably one question, one subject, the reading question, and probably more universally helps than anything else. So that's why I'm singling this one out. Two generalized ways that the Parent Gauge question helps. Left-hand side, you look at stuff that applies to all of your program, to all of the families. In this particular case, they discovered that the families that spoke Spanish in the home were not reading to the kids as much as those where English was the native language. So that's something you address in the classroom, and particularly the classrooms where you have a preponderance of Spanish-speaking people, but you just want to emphasize, hey, this is important. All the data that we know about how well kids do in life, depending on how much they're being read to. And one of the things that I just hear again and again is that the mothers really want to be good mothers. Explain it's important to the whole group. That's what you get from the left-hand side of this. The right-hand side, you can drill down and see which families might need a little bit of extra help. So you see a small number of families that are saying they're not getting very much time to read with a child in this case. So you want to find out why and solve that problem. One, a lot depends on the interviewer. Just you want to get a little bit of a sense of Why? And in many cases, it simply is an issue that the mother didn't understand how important that was. And mothers want to be good mothers. And once they understand, I'm told in about 50% of the cases, that alone is enough. Sometimes you got an issue that, I mean, our books in their native language. We had one program that had a number of families that spoke a West African language. They got books in that language. And for those families, that made a big difference. There's another thing that can come out that is not necessarily going to be obvious. You're only going to get it from a conversation. You're not going to get it from a questionnaire. If a mother does not read very well, she may be ashamed to admit that. If you do, but if you get a smell that that's what's going on, you can really help that mother. One, we got picture books. You can talk about the pictures. You can talk about the pictures in reading books. It's important that your child hear words. You can talk to them about why they brush their teeth. You don't need to be upset if you don't yet read as well as you hope to. And I've had a number of, it's two or three stories that just bring tears to my eyes. A mother saying, you know, I've not been really successful at a lot of things in life. The thing I want more than anything else is to be successful as a mother. And I've been concerned that I don't read. And you've lifted that burden from my shoulders. I don't feel that that's going to keep me from being a good mother. And you hear one story like that, and it bears you up for a week through a lot of different other issues that you come up with. So that's the drill down on reading. And I just want to reemphasize that I think if there's only one thing comes out of parent gauge, that you get significantly increased amounts of reading to the kids, it's probably worth it. Add all the other stuff on for free. Next slide, very different. This is just to show something that comes up as a result of a conversation. And if you've got an alert program, you can do something that's really important. Bluefields, West Virginia, coal mining town. The interviewers came back. This was a couple years ago when they were actually doing the interviews out in the home. Interviewers came back and said, we got a number of fathers out there who do not feel connected to anybody. They feel totally alone. In many cases, they lost high paying jobs in coal mines, high pay, pride in being able to support your family, high skill, pride in your skills. And for a number of fathers, that was just gone. Carla Coppola, who runs that program, said he was desperate, and she said, I got an idea. We have in our town in West Virginia a retired U.S. Army non-commissioned officer who spent his military career training special forces in Iraq and Afghanistan. I want to get him together with our fathers from 7 to 8 one evening next week in the Head Start Center. Just see how it works. He could be a good mentor, 15 years older, macho profession. Let's see how this works. Trella went by at 10:30 to turn out the lights, and nobody had left. And she said, what's happening? And the father said two things. One is, since we lost our jobs, this is the first person in authority who does not look down on us. And second, there's a lot of other fathers out there in the same boat that I'm in. I finally have somebody to feel connected to. Trella kept that program going, and it had an enormous impact on these particular families. And two follow-on stories. One is that at the end of a year, they got money from the state of West Virginia. One of these formerly despondent fathers took his wife and two kids to the Fatherhood Institute for full-time training. He's now a mentor to other fathers. That was a cool part of the story. The second part I did not learn until another year later, which is that the mentor, this retired Army sergeant, was himself suffering from PTSD when he began his mentoring experience. And his PTSD was so severe that he could not concentrate on the courses he was taking in a local community college. Joel told me that as a result of his being a mentor, it helped him deal so much with his own mental demons that he's now graduated. He's got skills that are going to help him support his family. So this is, just an example of the really cool stuff that can happen from things you learn and from a good program. And I've had several people say, that might be relevant in our town. We're not a coal mining town, but we had a plant, a manufacturing plant, an auto plant to close down. And yeah, we've got some military veterans around here. So there's some other people looking at it. And one of the things that I hope to be able to do is to pass along things that work for one program to other people. So this is my most dramatic story about something unexpected. My next two slides are things a little less dramatic, but much more common. I've got one slide right before this, I think, which talks about healthcare. And maybe the slide's missing, I don't know. But a number of programs said, we were astonished to find out that our mothers did not know who to call if the child got sick. And in one case, they have got a nurse on staff. It's there every day, but they didn't know. This is one of those problems. 80% of solving it is just finding out you've got it. So that's much less dramatic, but much more common. Within 2 weeks, everybody knew who to call if their child got sick. This story about incarcerated families, this comes from a program in Indiana, Little Giants, Marion, Indiana. They discovered they had a number of families with an incarcerated member, usually the father, not always. They worked out a problem with the local detention facility so that the father could participate in his child's development programs by phone. And she got a call from the father saying, I'm the only person in here who's got a relationship with their kids, thank you, Head Start. And, indirectly, thank you, Parent Gauge. So these things are things that can just come up. They come out of a conversation with people talking to each other, listening to each other. This is just to emphasize a specific program that told me how much it helped in their Focus Area 2 reviews. Now, we designed Parent Gauge very closely to help programs with the Focus Area 2 reviews. We're finding that the relevance is a lot more than that. People said, hey, this is really helpful to a Focus Area 1 review. I had somebody talk about that just within the last week. One program said, in our 5-year grant reauthorization, they asked, what are you doing about innovation? And we put in something about using Parent Gauge and got a favorable response. So again, anything that helps the relationship between a program and the Office of a Head Start is a good deal, and Parent Gauge helps with that. So that's, I guess, the end of my success stories. Kate, if you want to talk a little bit more about the typical timeline here, how we do this.
Sure. So, we've been talking a lot about how you can choose to do 2 or 3 different conversations with each family per year. What programs are typically doing is getting started over the summer. So as soon as you subscribe to Parent Gauge, within a day or 2, you have access to the system. You can get things set up. You can sort of play around. You can always delete things that you just used as tests. And you have time then to also train your staff. Training, again, is included. So all the tech support and training is included. And training either can take place by having your group view a recording of a previous live webinar, or I'm actually the trainer. And so I'm planning to do another couple, especially in the beginning of the school year. So starting the first week of August and probably again the first week of September. Again, for the middle of the year interviews in December. I hold trainings for both admins and then a separate one for staff. But we always have recordings of previous sessions. So that can take place over the summer or into the fall. And then again, we have the optional baseline measurement in the fall, asking the families, where are you right now and how can we help? And then a lot of programs are choosing to do their quote unquote, mid-year data collection sometime between November to February. I would say it's more common to come back from the winter break and check in with the families in January and February. And then at the end of the year, again, if you hope to see that you've made changes and they had an impact, then you would talk to your families again at the end of the year. So maybe May and June time span. But again, we have programs who are just saying, we want to test this out. We're just going to do the end of the year this year, or we're we'll test this out with our like 50% of our families in the beginning of the year. So it's extremely flexible up to however you want to implement these conversations with your families. So Bob, you want to go through this?
Sure. Just my quick comment about the way we price this. We decided we're pricing this now by the program size, and there's a 15% discount on all of these things for NHSA members. And the basic thing is we have priced this at a level that is a little bit less than it's been costing us. Yasmina, NHSA director, just hates to see any money spent on anything other than going up to Capitol Hill and getting more money, or getting them to ease up on some of the rules and regulations that they push us on. But Yasmina felt from the beginning, when she put me to work on this, that parent gauge was important enough that we were willing to subsidize it from the general NHSA budget. Now, we've actually reached a point now, it's about breaking even, because we've got enough subscribers. I mean, the $1 million that we put into this in the beginning to develop it, we're never expecting to get that back. But just on an operating basis, we've reached a point now that it's not costing us lobbying effort. And that's important because I think we're getting another big increase this year. But so the price is set at a level that we think it shouldn't be a stopper for anybody. And it's simple now. It's just based on the size of your grant. And that's the story. So that should be pretty simple. And the important thing is that this covers everything. There's no hidden costs, no extra charge for training and technical assistance, or even if we have to rewrite something. This happened initially where there was a few things that we had to rewrite, and we're constantly doing it now to make everything simpler. All of that's covered, and you can use it for every family, as many interviews as you want. That's what we've got to say, and we got some time left for questions, and hope anybody might have questions. Thank you.